The greatest fuel for growth for us to start was the happiness of our team. If we could make the team happy, like really happy at work, by just removing all the stuff they hate, then they would take care of the clients. And when they take care of the clients, as my dad always liked to say, the money and the success will just follow. If you're making a puzzle, or you're building a puzzle, what do? You look at the picture on the box. If you have a picture of where you want to be and what you want to achieve, it just makes it easier to know what pieces should go where.
Today, I am flanked by two Canadians. We've got Rioux and Fred Litwiniuk of Litgo Law. And we're going to talk about LSOs, MSOs. We're going to talk about the changing landscape of law firms as we enter 2026.
Most agencies sell individual tactics, SEO here, ads there, maybe a video if you're lucky. That's not us. At RR Digital, we build systems where strategy, channels, and intake actually work together to drive signed cases for your personal injury firm. If you're sick of your agency delivering on big talk but small results, go to rrdigitalmedia.com and let's talk.
Thank you for joining us on Jon Marc Podcast. Fred, thanks for making the trek.
Welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here.
We're in Miami at National Trial Lawyers. It is 85 degrees outside. What's the current temperature in Calgary?
I think it was -4 when I left. Yeah, I think it was around that this morning as well.
Celsius or Fahrenheit?
No, that's Fahrenheit. Yeah,
Okay.
no, it was more
I always
like,
got to check.
it was more like -20 Celsius. So I had to do a quick conversion in my head.
Thank you for coming, making the trek. We're going to have an interesting conversation today. I've gotten to know how you guys operate pretty well over the past 6 months, and the news that has come out about the evolution of private equity acquiring not just legal, right, law firms, legal agencies, that's part of what we're going to be talking about today, but just acquiring companies as a whole. Private equity has shifted and is now in the legal space aggressively.
Yes.
Would you describe what Litgo does as similar to what all of these other private equity firms are doing in the legal space?
The first thing I want to say is that I think a lot of people are still having the debate about whether private equity in legal is good or bad. It's not really a great idea, I think, to bury our heads in the sand about it, right? I think we have to acknowledge it as a reality. And just like any other industry where private equity enters, it's not all going to happen overnight, and not everybody's going to be equally affected by it or affected by it at all, right? Like think of something like dental. There's still, mom and pop dentists. We're almost like the buffer between private equity and legal, if that makes sense. We do have private equity investors in Litco LSO. They're minority investors and they're great capital partners for us. But my background is in legal and in legal operations. I'm a trial lawyer, trained as a trial lawyer, grew up in the business of personal injury law. My dad is a personal injury lawyer, and I understand both the lawyering side of it and the business side of it. And I think that that's something that no private equity firm at this point in time can legitimately say. So we're kind of the buffer between the two.
I really thought it was important to lay the groundwork for the rest of the conversation, because I think that when people hear about the acquisition of law firms, immediately their minds go to, okay, private equity is coming in. This is all about money. It's all about value extraction. It's all about how fast can we grow and squeeze as much money out as quickly as possible, or grow it to a point where we can just now exit, right? And that's not what Litgo is doing. Litgo was a law firm before Litgo was an LSO, right?
That's right. And we continue to be a law firm. And just to be clear, right, and I think, most of the people that are watching or listening to this understand that in most cases, non-lawyers still cannot own law firms. Nothing's changed materially in that except for, a handful of exceptions, the most notable of which right now is got to be Arizona, right? And people are talking about Arizona ABSs or alternative business structures as a way for non-lawyers to actually own a law firm. And that is happening. But I think, the way that we are operating is that all of our law firms, and we have, 4 law firms that are part of the LSO now, all of them are and continue to be owned by lawyers. And so there's no ownership whatsoever. There's no investment whatsoever in the law firm. It's all in the back office, if you will, or the services that the lawyers require to deliver great legal work. And so that's that MSO or managed services organization structure that is getting a lot of coverage right now.
When traditional private equity comes into a law firm, what are the things that you are seeing them do? How are they changing a law firm? Separate from what you guys are doing. Let's talk about like kind of the broad stroke and what's happening in the space.
That's a really good question from the standpoint of what does private equity want? And I think the first thing we have to remember is that private equity is not a monolith. We speak of it as it is, like it is some sort of, one thing, like a hive mind, and everyone's behaving the same way. And so not all private equity is private equity. There's a lot of nuance within that. There's a lot of different types of firms. There are firms that are strongly looking at legal. There are firms that don't think that private equity will ever be really even fully participating in legal, right? So there's still some differences of opinion in that industry, and there's all kinds of differences in size and scope. And by no means am I, the private equity expert, but I have talked to a lot of private equity firms that are interested in legal. And what I find a lot is that they are, much as the lawyers who are learning about private equity as we go right now, the private equity funds are learning about law firms, and in particular, personal injury law firms, because the types of law firms that people in private equity are typically exposed to are AmLaw 200 types of law firms, corporate law firms, M&A law firms, transactional law firms, like, not contingent fee.
Those could not operate any differently than a personal injury law firm.
Completely. The business model is night and day, right? And not the least of which is the contingent fee aspect of that, right? You don't get paid until we win kind of thing. Whereas the lawyers they are used to dealing with, they work on a billable hour. And if the lawyer leaves the firm, they typically walk out the door with their files, with their clients, right? And so there's a lot of learning that has to take place about what the consumer side, what we call the consumer-facing side of legal is compared to sort of the corporate-facing side of legal.
It's very interesting because personal injury is consumer service-based business that is extremely different than every other consumer service-based business. Not like a dentist. They're not like a lawn maintenance company. They're not like an electrician or a plumber. They service all those people, but the revenue model and how they operate and how much they spend on marketing is grossly different than every other consumer service-based business.
100%. And for those of us who have, grown up in this business or who work with people in this business and have done so for a long time, a lot of the things that we understand because of our exposure or, through intuition, or even just look at a firm and sort of immediately identify, what's going on within the firm. If we can really get under the hood, private equity folks just don't know that, right? And it's not a knock on them. It's just like, this is like no other business or almost like no other business that they have ever looked at, right? So they don't have the reps. A lot of this process is also, us in the legal industry wanting to, I take this really seriously. I really want to protect our thing, if that makes sense, right? Like having grown up in this industry, particularly in personal injury, I feel very protective of it. And I want to make sure that, as private equity enters, that it's done in the right way. And so I think what's really important in that is the education piece and teaching, private equity what is special and unique and different about what we do.
You have Litgo Law
Yes.
in Calgary, right? And a great mascot, by the way. Larry the Unicorn.
Larry the Unicorn, that's right. Yeah.
You were able to grow Litgo, right? When you look at money coming into the legal space, traditionally you're looking at institutional entities that have grown things in other industries, grown businesses in other industries, and they're now trying to apply that to legal. You've actually done it in legal. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to grow Litgo Law to be the dominant Alberta personal injury law firm?
Yeah, happy to. Thank you for the compliment. We love Larry the Unicorn. He's named after my dad. That's my dad's name,
Really?
Larry. Yeah, absolutely. So Litgo Law was founded as Litwiniuk and Company by my mom and dad. So my dad, an injury lawyer, and my mom, an accountant. I had the benefit, I always say that was the first MSO I ever saw, because my mother, being the business-minded accounting person, handled the operations and finance, and my dad handled the legal. And, while they made decisions together and they complemented each other, that was really how they split the business. So I didn't really see another way to operate a firm. So when my brother Todd and I had the opportunity to make our first ever acquisition, which was that firm that we bought from our parents, we already had a great, blueprint for, how to make a firm efficient. And my mother, to her credit, was pretty cutting edge on all things technological as well. When we bought that firm, it was 20 people. And we set about scaling it up to be, Alberta's largest, and we think best. We scaled it up to about 150 people. And we did that by simply just applying more of those lessons. In other words, just figuring out, okay, what is on the legal side and what is on the everything else side? Because the two are very different. I always find, and you guys probably find this too, because you talk to a lot of lawyers, right? A lot of lawyers, we go to law school to be lawyers, right? Not to do HR or IT or accounting and finance or even marketing. Although a lot of us, probably really enjoy the marketing side of the business. It is probably the most fun part for a lot of the lawyers. We're not trained in those things, and yet we find ourselves thrust into these roles. We took that idea of leave the lawyering to the lawyers, and then everything else should support the delivery of amazing legal services to the clients.
Was that the biggest fuel for growth, is just constantly giving great client service?
We really focused on that. But I think the greatest fuel for growth for us to start was the happiness of our team. Stole this mantra from a guy named John DeJulius, who's a customer service expert. He says, your clients will never be any happier than your team. And we really took that to heart, right? Like, think about it. If you've got somebody who's coming to see you at potentially the worst time in their lives, right? I mean, worst case scenario, you've got somebody who is, they've lost a loved one.
It's never a positive situation.
Never, right? And they're usually going through the worst thing in their lives. Maybe there's a traumatic brain injury and somebody they love has like a changed personality or is disabled for life. These are horrible, horrible situations for people. And we have to pour a lot of empathy into that, right? That can be really challenging for any human being. But I mean, when you're also a litigator and you've got to focus on fighting and you've got to focus on advocating and you've got to focus on strategy and all these sort of big items that come into really maximizing claim value and doing the best job that you possibly can for your client. It's really difficult to do that day in and day out and maintain that sense of empathy. But it's much more difficult if you feel like nobody cares about you. Mm-hmm. So if nobody cares about you and like how you feel, how you practice, whether your tools work, whether, the systems and support and the people that support you can be trusted or are delivering what you need, it's really hard to do that day in and day out. So that's really what we started with, was this idea that if we could make the team happy, like really happy at work, by just removing all the stuff they hate as much as that's possible, right? There's always stuff you don't like to do, but as much as possible, getting the obstacles out of their way that prevent great people from being great, then they would take care of the clients. And when they take care of the clients, as my dad always liked to say, the money and the success will just follow, right? So that's really the idea.
You guys were, I think you still are, sponsor of the Calgary Flames?
Yes.
Canada, you don't have many options for sports teams to sponsor. The Calgary Flames are not only just a sports team that happens to be in Calgary, they are probably one of the biggest fan base sports franchises in Canada, right? Calgary Flames have a huge following.
Absolutely.
Yeah, probably second to the Montreal Canadiens.
Yep.
I don't know. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they probably
a
pretty good.
Yeah.
Fans.
I'm going to sit back and let the Canadians fight over the hockey team.
Those Leafs fans.
Yeah. The decision to invest in partnering with them,
yes,
right, obviously had to have been a significant financial investment and needed to be a strategic decision. And we get asked all the time from our clients. We have some who sponsor NFL teams, NBA teams, Major League Baseball teams, and NHL teams now. So I guess we have it all covered. But there's a lot of interest in co-branding with a major sports franchise. Can you talk about your decision to do that? And if you could rewind back, would you do it again? Were there things you would change about that? Because that really does change sort of the face of any brand once you start aligning with another brand.
That's an ongoing challenge for us, right? And still thinking about that, from the standpoint of ROI versus the standpoint of brand building. So that's really, the challenge for us. And I wouldn't advocate that be the first thing that any firm do. Once you're large and you're more of the gorilla in the market, then it can make sense to align yourself with a great community-focused brand like the Calgary Flames are in our market. A wise man recently said to me that attribution's only getting harder. And I agree with that, right? And so there's often a focus, I think, in marketing in particular, where it's like we want to see ROI, right? And we want to see attribution, and we want to understand that this dollar spent here generated X dollars over here. And I think that of all the things that we do, the Flames partnership is probably the least tangible. It's probably the hardest one, and there are various things that we do to measure that, but it is challenging. On the other hand, the Flames are really, they're it in Calgary, right? I mean, they are the organization, the most famous people in town, the biggest organization. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that. And so from a community involvement standpoint, they have the Flames Foundation, which does an incredible work in the community. And that's, I could go on and on about the things that they do for the city of Calgary and for the outlying areas, but it's just something where, it is really hard to say on a balance sheet, or it's really hard to say when you look at the financials to say this is generated this kind of return for us. But from a brand building standpoint, I think that it's just unbeatable for the exposure that you get and the alignment that you get.
How are you making decisions now with the evolving attribution that we're dealing with, whether it's digital marketing losing attribution or some of these brand building activities that are compounding each other? How do you
Very expensive brand building activity.
very expensive brand building activity? How do you go about making decisions?
Well, I would say, first of all, we make those decisions with a team, right? So we're fortunate to be at a size now where we do have just a fantastic team of people that work to make these decisions together. So I get a lot of, great advice and a lot of great partners that we work with that, really help us with those decisions. I think that's incredibly important. We think about it a lot from the standpoint of what our goals are. What are our goals for Litco Law in Alberta? That really helps drive decisions. If you don't know where you're going, right? It's like our business coach always says, if you're making a puzzle or you're building a puzzle, what do? You look at the picture on the box. If you have a picture of where you want to be and what you want to achieve, it just makes it easier to know what pieces should go where. And we're not always perfect on that. Sometimes we put a piece in the wrong place, so we have to pull it out and try again. But that really helps us inform our decisions. So what do we start with? We start with our core purpose, which at Litco Law is to balance the power, right? To seek out and eliminate unfairness in the world. We start with our core values. What do we believe in? What do we care about? Those are really important. And then we think about, okay, what are our 3 to 5 year objectives? Where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years? What things have to be true for this business to be very successful? We break that down to a 1-year plan where we say, okay, well, this year we've got to achieve this with things like our solid leads, our signups, things like that. So sales, marketing and sales, among other priorities that we set for the business. All the firms as part of Litco LSO do this coaching and planning process so that everybody has a picture that they can build towards. And that helps make the decisions easier. On more of a day-to-day level, a lot of it is just test, implement, measure, pivot if necessary, go all in if necessary. I mean, it's really just a constant process of evaluation, reevaluation, test, verify. And that's particularly true the larger we've gotten, right? Because when you're starting out, you can kind of grow like this, but there's a point of diminishing returns with any marketing investment. And the larger you get, I think it's easier to come up against that point.
What are some of the decisions that you've made or tests you've run that you look back on and you want to like rewind the clock and say like, I wish we didn't do X?
Or that I wish we hadn't done.
You said you run a lot of tests, right? You do a lot of different things. You invest in a lot of different things.
We did a quadrant test in the city of Edmonton. So what I mean by that is a lot of firms, I really love billboard advertising, right? And billboard advertising, it can be a hot button topic because some people are really passionately in favor and some people are really passionate against it. And I don't know that there's a right way. And I think it does work for some people, but measuring ROI or attribution with billboards can be tough.
Yep.
In the city of Edmonton, we basically divided the city up into quadrants and we placed billboards on roads that weren't likely to be traveled by people who didn't live in the area. And then we tracked by postal code or zip code, as you guys call it, right? We tracked by the postal code attribution to see, where it came from. I don't know that exercise really told us anything. We did see increases in areas where we had billboards, but I don't know that they were incredibly meaningful. But the thing about a billboard is, and the thing about our business is, and this is why I probably wouldn't do it again, is that someone may have seen that billboard 8 months ago, 2 years ago, and that was one of 9 impressions that they saw that they needed to, when they Googled us or they asked ChatGPT or Gemini or whoever about us, when they saw the name, they didn't even realize that they had seen that billboard and it had made a difference. The reason why I don't think I would do it again is because I don't think we've used that data to drive any meaningful decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about this topic a lot. When you look at brand building non-trackable activities, I think there should be a portion of a marketing budget that is a set aside for non-trackable things, activities, community involvement, billboards, TV, radio, buses. I mean, you name it, right? Even like the Flames sponsorship. Take that and you then say, how much visibility can I get for that? How many eyeballs, how many of the right eyeballs, how many impressions, how much frequency, as opposed to thinking about like each individual thing.
Yeah.
Think about it holistically and try and extract as much value out of that investment as you can. And then you look at your overall picture and you say, okay, it worked or it didn't work, but you really can't gauge whether that specific thing that you did worked or didn't work. All you can really look back and say is, would there have been a way for me to get more impressions or better impressions or hit the right people more times? Because like you said, I could place a billboard 8 months ago or 2 years ago, and that billboard could have influence, but it's the big mix of everything together.
I agree with that 100%. And I'll add to that we haven't even started talking about what the content of the billboard was. right? So many people forget, and you guys probably noticed this because
I'm
you're
hoping it was Larry the Unicorn.
Larry, I'm hoping too, right? But like you guys probably noticed this. I know I do because I'm paying attention to marketing, but I'll drive down the highway sometimes and just look at billboards.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, can't read that. Don't know what that's
I
for.
judge billboards very aggressively now. Like, that was dumb.
Right?
One of the big things, I hate when people put phone numbers on billboards. I'm like, dude, there's no chance anyone's calling that unless you have a vanity number. I'm just like, put something up there that's memorable so they might remember you when it comes up.
100%. Because you've only got, what do you think, 2 seconds, 3 seconds to catch, unless they're stuck in traffic?
Yeah.
You've got barely enough time to catch anyone's attention with a billboard that they're going to be able to read your fine print. And what looked great on copy in front of you, on a piece of paper, just might not work on a billboard. So think about that 2 to 3 second rule that you've got. I say maybe 8 seconds at the outset that you've got to really catch somebody's attention. So, you could run a test like that, but if your billboard sucks, then is it really going to move the needle?
The most effective billboard that I've ever seen that has actually made me take action, I remember there was a mattress company. It was a black billboard, and it just had, in giant white letters, it just had a website. It didn't say they sold mattresses, said nothing. It was just like 3 letters. I don't even remember what it was, .com. I'm like, I have to see what this is. I don't know if it's like a game that they're playing around the city or what. And it wound up being like a thing for online mattress.
And you never forgot it.
Well, I did forget. I can't remember what it was. You're right. The creative is extremely important. A way to be memorable in as little time as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's the unicorn, or if it's a vanity phone number, or if it's someone's face, John Morgan does all these ads where he's like dressed up as Santa Claus during Christmas.
Yeah.
I think it was fa la la la, right? Like, and then people take a picture of it and like they joke about it, but like you're getting free impressions from that.
Yes.
Right? And figuring out ways where you can leverage the visibility that you have to just keep pushing out that brand visibility, I think is the way to go. Mark, you always talk about that study that Google did years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It was
7-11-14, I believe. They need to interact with your brand across 7 different channels, 11 touch points, and like almost 14 hours of content for them to like remember your firm, like who you are, like that when something comes up. So like you're a brand that lives rent-free in their brain. Like you have to interact with them across multiple mediums, multiple times, and lots of exposure.
The quintessential example of this is like Apple. One of those impressions is people wearing their AirPods. That is an impression. One of those impressions is like you sitting here with your iPhone, right? I'm seeing the brand. Figuring out ways to bring a brand into the real world, right? You talk about like the hockey sponsorship, right? That is a place where people are an interaction. It's a real world thing. It's tangible, right? And those things are really hard to do.
I will say I was big on direct response marketing for most of my marketing career and was not a brand person. Recently, I flipped the story on this and I'm very much like into brand marketing. And then when I was already on that journey, one of the things that solidified it for me was, it was a small example, but like when we started the podcast in August of last year, we started running it. So we don't know who's watching anything. Slowly growing, but unless someone likes or comments, you don't know who's watching, right?
Yeah.
So you see these numbers. I'm like, it's reaching people. I don't know if it's a bot or if it's a human. And then we went to Mass Torch Made Perfect. And I would go to the elevator and go like, hey, Mark. And I was like, yes. I was like, we've met before. He's like, you're the podcast guys. And I was like, oh, people are watching. And then that happened in MTMP over and over and over again. I was like, so like, we're getting the brand impressions out there. People are viewing the content and they're remembering who we are at a much smaller scale than any personal injury lawyer is doing. But it just solidified that like if you put the content out there that people really want to watch and interact with your brand, when they want to interact with it, if they have the opportunity to interact with you back, they will.
I couldn't agree with that more. It makes me think that a lot of marketing requires empathy.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, when they market, they put what they want to put out there as opposed to, understanding what their target audience or their target market needs. Mark Cuban likes to say selling is helping. If you have something that somebody needs, you're not even selling it to them. You're just making them aware that it exists in a way that's the easiest possible way, reducing the friction. And your example of being recognized is paralleled by my example of everybody I talk to, not everybody, but a lot of people that I talk to in Calgary, especially, I'll say the words Litco law and they'll be like, the unicorn.
Yeah.
The unicorn, right? And the unicorn, I love the unicorn. Larry, I put him on everything if I could, right? Because I think it's a cool way to represent our brand in a character that I think embodies what we're trying to say about ourselves. I think it's really tough to do with a visual. I think we've done it, and I'm really, really proud of the unicorn. To some people, it's polarizing, right? I know even some lawyers will look at that and go, oh, that's unprofessional, or that's not right, or it's silly or whatever. The point is that people recognize it and people talk about it. I've even had people come to me and they'll say, oh, that horse that you got is really cool. And I'll be like, it's actually a unicorn. And then we have a whole conversation.
The white one with the horn.
Yeah, the one with the horn. Exactly. I was like, do we need to talk to my marketing department? Do we need to make that horn bigger? But the whole point of that is that if it's something that people will talk about and they will remember, that's a good thing, I think, unless it's, something really negative. But we send Larry out to community events. We have a street festival in Calgary called the Lilac Festival. He goes out there and he interacts and kids take pictures with him. We'll send him to, different events. If we could send him to the Children's Hospital, we'll send him there. If we could send him to a Flames game and he can hang out with Harvey the Hound.
I got a question for you first, before you continue down this path.
Yeah.
Is the unicorn 2 people or 1 person in the costume?
What costume?
Is it on 2 legs?
My sister is going to kill me if I don't just say, what costume? What are you talking about? He's real. The unicorn is real, John.
I really need to know if you put 2 people in and make one of them be the butt of the unicorn.
He's a standing up unicorn.
He's a standing up unicorn.
He wears a suit. Sometimes he can wear a Flames jersey, he can wear some various different outfits, but he's a standing up, he's an upright citizen.
Like a mascot, like you would see at
100%. Yeah. Absolutely.
A sports game.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He's great.
I love that.
We have fun toy unicorns that we hand out to kids when they come to the office.
That's
and we've got
smart.
stickers and all that sort of stuff because it's fun. And even though we do a serious job, we do a very, very serious job, we don't have to be serious to the point of unapproachability with our clients. We would love to intimidate our opponents.
Yeah.
That's the point, right? And we'd love for them to fear us in a way, or to at least respect us and say, those are formidable trial lawyers. And we know that if we don't pay full value, they're going to take us to the mat and it's going to be serious. And we don't need to project that to people who have just gone through one of the worst things of their lives and just need a little bit of softness and kindness in their lives.
Let's parlay that into a conversation about the firms that have joined Litgo LSO.
Yes.
And the unique personalities that exist within those firms. If a firm has their own version of Larry the Unicorn, right, and Litgo now partners with them, how do you maintain that unique personality while also now scaling and operationalizing that local firm?
So all the firms that join the LSO, they keep their brands. Here's the thing about our organization is that we approach this from a place of humility, because I know the Calgary market really well. I know the Edmonton market reasonably well. I know Alberta fairly well. I've grown up there, born and raised my whole life. Even so, I understand the Calgary market best of all of those because I'm local to that market. I grew up there and I continue to live there. I don't know what the market is like in places like Halifax, Nova Scotia, where we have a firm, or Atlanta, Georgia, where we have a firm, or Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where we have a firm headquartered that does business at 20 locations across the United States with licensure in 46 states, right? I don't have that local knowledge. I don't have the jurisdictional knowledge, the legal knowledge, the community knowledge. I don't know the teams well. I don't understand all of those things. What I understand well, I think, is how to remove obstacles from the path of great attorneys who want to achieve great things. And that's the point of the MSO is keep your brand, keep doing what you're doing, do more of it, do it better. Let us help you get where you would get anyway. But instead of it taking 10 years, maybe it can take 2 because we've got resources, we've got money, we've got team members. And we can also just share openly with each other. Oh, you're doing that at that firm? Oh, that's cool. Let's try that over here. No, that wouldn't work here because of this or that and the other thing. Let's pilot something here. We'll try it somewhere else. So I think that's the benefit.
I think it's a really beneficial model that people aren't aware of, law firm owners, because a lot of times they say, hey, I want to grow. I want to be aggressive. And they see the only option is potentially taking on a ton of debt.
That's right.
And then they're taking on a ton of debt and they're responsible for building out the firm. Usually they spend a ton of money on marketing. And then they're not sleeping well at night because they see that big payment they had to start making with interest on that payment. And they see it as the only option to grow, or this is potentially a different option. We're like, hey, you get to keep your firm. You're not selling out. You have people that are investing in the firm, people that are helping you grow, but you're not also exiting at the same time. And you potentially have that same nice little financial payday at the end of the rainbow.
Your listeners, your viewers know this because they've done it. My brother Todd and I watched my parents do this year after year after year, pushing it all back in, right? You make all this money, but you push it back in to invest in your growth, and you're always betting on yourself, which I think is a wonderful thing. And at some point, it's nice to receive some of that value for you and your family, to realize the value of the business you've built, not just the practice that you've built. Take some risk off the table, right? I mean, no business is perfect, and we always face risks, and there's always ups and downs in that entrepreneur or business person's life. And so, with the LSO, we really, again, approached it with the viewpoint of, we thought there would be a point where private equity was going to enter our industry. What are the bad things that could happen? What are the good things that could happen? What would we want as trial lawyers? What would be a great solution for us in this new world? We built that. That's what we built, was this idea of, okay, how can a smaller firm get the resources and the ability to get access to capital and other things that they need to compete with giants in this new world of consolidation without losing their soul?
Real quick, for the people watching and listening, can you explain what an LSO and MSO is?
LSO is just what we call an MSO. We decided to give it its own name. We call it a legal support organization as opposed to a managed services organization. But really, we mean the same thing. So an MSO, managed services organization, in this context is just really, think of it like you've got the law firm here, which in our case, the way we think about it is lawyers and clients, and everything that goes into supporting those lawyers or those attorneys to do what they do at the highest level, right? And there's already a version of this going on in most firms anyway, right? You've got your paralegals and you've got your administrative people and your accounting or finance people, or maybe someone who does lien resolution or settlements.
So paralegals, where are they falling in the organization?
The paralegals, they are in the management company in our organization or in the managed services organization because they provide a service to the attorneys, right?
Got it.
What's regulated is the practice of law. And what we have to always, always, always make sure of is that lawyers are free and unfettered to practice and use their own professional discretion without somebody standing over them and trying to force them to do something with a case for the wrong reasons.
Is that what you do? You don't call them up and say, I want you to do this.
That's the opposite of
You
what
make
I
Seth do that?
Yeah, that's right. We make our CO do that. At a conference recently, I was talking to some of the great ethics lawyers. The conversation drifted to all the PE people who are getting interested in this. They're calling these ethics lawyers up. They're like, how can I get involved? How can I do this? In every case where an industry opens up like this and there is opportunity, there are opportunists. So there are people who are flocking to us now for the absolute wrong reasons, right? Make a quick buck, don't care about the clients, just care about money, right? The opportunists, and we're all seeing them, and you've met a few of them, I'm sure already. They're coming out of the woodwork and they just want to make a ton of money. And so some of these PE firms, they go to these ethics lawyers and they're like, right, how do I control the lawyers, right? Conversation over, right? Conversation over.
They're like, it's my money. They should do what I say.
That's right. And that's illegal. It's against the rules. It's unethical. And it's completely the wrong approach. The right approach, in my view, and I think that bar associations would agree with me, is to let the lawyers be the lawyers. Let the attorneys do what they do best, right? Which is try cases or get value for clients or take care of their clients, and just use the MSO structure, right? The managed services organization structure, to provide a layer of professionalization on all of the support services. Just help the support services get better. Private equity coming in and say, okay, right, how do I control the surgeon? Do you want a private equity person in the operating room with your surgeon deciding whether or not they should take out, that kidney, or they should remove that, malignant growth? Or that's ridiculous. It's preposterous. But it's the same thing applies to any licensed professional, and lawyers are no different. Leave the lawyers alone. If any private equity people are watching this, don't approach it from that way. It's the wrong way.
So what are the functions? Let's run through. What are the functions that you guys take into the MSO?
Very first thing for us is always finance and accounting. It's always a challenge for firms, and it's something that we need to have complete visibility on. And usually the firms are like, please.
I don't know any firm that loves that part of the operation.
I don't know any business that loves that part of the operation.
I hate it.
It's not fun, right? Especially for people who aren't minded that way. So we have team members who are fantastic and who are, who love that stuff. So for every job that you and I might hate, there's somebody out there who just loves to do it. And some of the firms, honestly, they've already outsourced it to somebody else anyway, right? So we can either continue with that outsourced provider, as we often do, or if it makes sense, we can do that for them. The other ones that we typically look at immediately would be IT. That's another one where I've never heard a firm owner be like, you know what, I would love to join, but can I just please hold on to help desk functions.
Most of them also outsource that anyway.
They also often outsource that anyway. So it's accounting and finance, it's the IT, and then it's, of course, what people call HR, what we call people and culture. They love to hire great people, but it's the finding the great people and the going through all of the recruiting and, sifting through the resumes.
I didn't even think about that.
Onboarding, training, what system do you manage that in? How do you make sure that the onboarding and offboarding experience is consistent and high quality? Those are things that what busy attorney has time as a managing partner of a law firm to really turn their minds to excellence in HR, right? It's not in their wheelhouse and they don't love it. So HR, IT.
Right behind accounting, HR is probably my least favorite task.
For a lot of people.
Recruiting, interviewing, and hiring is a humongous task that people do not realize.
Yeah.
And training. I've worked at some of the largest companies in the world with the best, humongous training teams, and they still suck at training.
It's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard to be good at, right? It is really hard to be good at. And then marketing, right, is a big one for us. We have to take a look at marketing. And the goal is not to change what people are doing, but rather to augment and support it. Because usually a great firm that wants to join us is going to have pretty good marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be pretty good. And
pretty successful. And they'll have cases coming in at that point.
And they just want to do more.
Yeah.
They want to say, okay, well, how do I get to the next level with marketing? I'm doing these things. I'd like to explore these other things. And we can support with that, not only with experts and people that we have that advise us and that we work with, but also with capital. And that's really important because in our corner of the world, right, it's a niche business. PI is a niche business that traditional bankers don't typically understand and won't take the time to understand. Its access to capital has been somewhat limited or at a high price, right? And I feel like access to capital for most lawyers mean, well, I'm going to take a smaller distribution this year and push all my chips back in. And we just want to turn that on its head and say, let's get capital from somewhere else and let's grow this thing together and help you get where you want to go faster.
You got to think for the outside capital, it's got to be a safer investment going through you guys. They know the whole background operation, the numbers have been looked over, than just investing in a single firm or giving a loan out to a single firm that they have. It's a brand new relationship versus someone who's been vetted through the LSO.
That's completely correct. I mean, I've heard one person describe the PE process where one goes through this whole process of PE to decide whether or not they're going to make an investment in your company. I've heard it likened to a colonoscopy.
Yeah.
So, if it's a colonoscopy, it's probably not that much fun, but it also means that they kind of turn you inside and out. I always say they turn you inside and out like a glove. So they've done that to us. And so now when firms join us, we have to do our diligence, obviously. And there's a lot that we look at and think about. And there's just not that barrier to access the capital that there is for firms that want to just, for example, there's probably somebody listening to this podcast. It's like, well, I don't want to go through Litco LSO. I would like to go and get my own PE investment and do it. You can absolutely do that. It is an order of magnitude more challenging to access that capital that way than it is to join somebody who already has it.
One department we skipped over is intake.
That's what I've been itching to ask that question.
Yeah. So intake, we don't do as a consolidation at this point in time. Like we don't have consolidated intake at this time. It is something that we are looking at for the future.
I would love someone from Atlanta calling in to get someone from Calgary on the phone.
And that's and that's the issue. What can you consolidate without losing the local feel? And part of this is understanding what your brand promises. Just to give you an exact example of that. Years ago, we used to use an outsourced intake provider for after hours, and they were out of a southern state.
At Litgo.
At Litco Law.
Yeah.
And people would call in from Calgary, and the person on the other end of the line, through no fault of their own, right? They're just from a different place, did not even pronounce Calgary the way that a Calgarian does. It's a Calgary or something like that, right? And they wouldn't know the names of the
Calgary,
etc. It's just,
love that.
It depends, I think, somewhat what your brand promises are. But if, for example, you advertise that you are local and that you're part of the community and you're part of the fabric of the community, and you have somebody answering the phone who's not of and from the community, that can be a clash with your brand promises, right? So I think it's important to think about that. That doesn't mean that we can't consolidate things like intake analytics or software or data, things like that, where, data visualization and understand those things. AI, in terms of where are people answering the phones, I think it's really important to understand who's calling and what they expect. That's the empathy piece of it.
That's a great point. Like when I'm thinking about consolidating intake, I was not thinking about that part of it. I was thinking about operationalizing the component of a legal practice that every single day is affecting the entire operation, because you've got leads coming in that if they're not getting converted and signed, you're not getting new cases in the door, and then the whole system, which is a very cash flow sensitive business, just winds up shutting down.
Yeah.
That's the biggest pain point for lawyers. We talk to them all the time. Yes, marketing, right? We don't really get too much into the operations. Like when you talk about finance, like we just know it's a pain point. But intake, every attorney that you speak to here at this conference will tell you intake is one of their, if not the biggest pain point for them.
And we love to help with intake. It's simply that we do it as a matter of on the individual firm basis, as opposed to
recommendations where they can make some improvements and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And in certain cases, if it makes sense, we have time zone coverage now, right? So we can do some time shifting and things like that as well. But a lot of it is the training and how to make intake work really well. I think we do a really great job of that because we have fantastic team members who really know how to do that. So much of this is just putting yourself in the shoes of the people you want to help. So we want to help lawyers be great. So we put ourselves in the shoes of the lawyers. The people in intake, they want to help the people who are calling. So we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the people who are calling. So if I call you up, John, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I got into an accident the other day, corner of Glenmore and McLeod. And you know how there's that weird interchange where they kind of come from both ways. Well, the guy kind of cut over into my lane and he like clipped me head on. You have no idea what I'm talking about. If there are any Calgarians who are listening to this, they're like, I know exactly where that is. Oh yeah, that's by Chinook Center. I know how the lanes kind of go and they cross over. Yeah, they completely get it in their mind immediately. And
That's a very good point.
it's just something to think about.
I was literally, when you were telling me that story, thinking about like in Atlanta, if someone called in being like, hey, I got hit merging from the, you know, that part of 400 where you merge in from the left side. Someone would be like, merging on the highway from the left side, that's illegal. Be like, yeah, it's in Atlanta. So everyone hits each other.
It's an Atlanta thing.
Yeah, you would
right?
know. You're like, oh, yeah, right there.
So if you're serving someone from Atlanta, it might pay you to know something about Atlanta, right? Like it might be a good idea to know the community and be part of the community.
If we talk to all the firms that have joined the LSO, what would they say unanimously has been the biggest value add working with Litgo LSO?
Oh, I wonder if they would all say the same thing. I think the biggest value add has got to be just the ability to bring problems to someone else, right? To have somebody
That's
else.
a good one.
Todd and I, we know what this is like. We watched our parents do it for years, right? They wore the problems. I always say the firm ran us. When I was a kid, the firm ran our family. We didn't run it. It ran us. We made vacation decisions around the firm. We made spending decisions around the firm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Every dinner conversation was about the office and the firm because our parents worked together and they worked in it and we were, always part of it. And so, would you like to run your firm instead of having it run you? Would you like to share the burden a little bit? Isn't it nice to like turn to somebody else and say, how would you solve this problem? Would you help me solve this problem? Can you solve this problem for me? As an entrepreneur who's had to wear all of that weight, deep gratitude that I had family members, my brother to share that with. My sister works at Litco Law as well. I also have my parents to share it with over the years. I know a lot of attorneys that own their own firms. I know they're shouldering that alone, and it's the weight of pressure. So being a lawyer on its own already comes with massive pressure. You have the pressure of deadlines and courts and judges and the law and your ethical obligations.
And if you don't win,
yes,
your clients get nothing.
And neither do you.
Yeah.
Right? There's a massive weight of pressure. Then add all of the traditional pressures that a business owner faces on top of that, and you don't have anyone to share that with. That's really, really hard. And it's really hard to grow past those inflection points where you get to 20 people or you get to 50 or you get to 100, like those inflection points.
We have these conversations all the time as entrepreneurs who own our own business. We've had to go through those milestones and we felt it, right? Like at 40, 45 people, we're like, I don't think we need a full-time HR person. We need someone paying attention to all this stuff. You've got employees in like 15 different states. We've got all this compliance to deal with. Now we're dealing with finance. It's just having someone to share that with. Thank God I've got, Marc by my side. It's really, really important because praise rolls downhill, shit rolls uphill. And to have someone who's higher up on the hill than you are, where that shit could roll just a little bit higher, you could, share it a little bit, that's just something it's invaluable. And until you're in that position as a business owner, as a law firm owner.
It's nice to be able to have someone who can help you with the problems that is perfectly aligned with your goals.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can call someone who's a peer, maybe another lawyer, they'll help you out, but they want you to do well, but they're not like financially invested in you doing well as a favor, right? But like you're asking someone to help you who is 100% aligned on the same goal as you to be successful.
Yeah.
And will tell you as it is and make sure they're doing all the things for the best of the firm.
You put that really well. I'm going to start using that because that's it, right? Perfect alignment. We all win together. And I think I often say to founders, it's a bit like building an all-star team, right? You're already great at what you do in your market. Come and join this team. And all of a sudden you're playing with all the other pros. And if we win this all together, it's like winning the Olympic medal together or winning the all-star game or whatever, however you want to put it. It's a challenge, I think, to be part of something larger when you've been at the head of your own thing, right? And to have to sort of put aside ego and put aside that sort of king of the castle or queen of the castle, as it may be, sort of ethos to join and be part of something larger. But as long as everybody believes in it enough, I think it's completely doable.
Quick question for you. Who is the LSO not for?
I wish I had the document in front of me. I have a document that lists who it's not for. And at the top of that is the people who want a bag of money and just want to go away. So we're looking for partners.
They're not selling and retiring. They're still working.
We want people who are going to stay with us. Usually we ask them to stick around for at least 3 years, but my preference is, forever, if you can, not forever, but until it, suits you because you enjoy it so much and you get to do more of what you love and less of what you don't. If we're delivering on what we say we can do, that's the experience they should have. It's also not for people who can't be part of a team. If you can't be part of something and you can't understand that one of our core values is Lombardi, not Heisman. Right? Which says it all. We're a team. It's not about the individual trophy. We're not looking for, somebody who wants to be the highest scorer on the worst team. We need somebody who can understand that the interests of the team, the platform, the organization have to come ahead of their own personal interests from time to time. Not for somebody who doesn't, I think, believe in the future that we think is going to come to pass in the legal industry, which is one of greater involvement by private equity, greater consolidation. And I know that's scary to a lot of people. There will be good things that come from that, and there'll be bad things that come from that. Like I said off the top, I don't think burying one's head in the sand at every one of these conferences.
Yeah, I think we could have said last year is coming. It's here.
It's here.
Yeah.
It's here.
One of our predictions for 2026 was further consolidation in the legal industry. I think that's happening. You guys are at the forefront of it. For any law firm, managing partner owners who are at that point where they're even considering something like this, I recommend talk to Fred and his team, at least explore and understand what the future is looking like.
We'll put your contact information in the description of all of our posts so they can reach out to you. But if they want to reach out to you and learn more, what's the best way for our audience to get a hold of you?
I would say visit litcolso.com. That would be the best place. That's LITCO-LSO.com. That's my radio voice for you.
Check out litgolaw.com and see how Larry the Unicorn is throughout the website and part of the Litgo brand. You guys do some great things. So thank you very much, Fred, for joining us on the podcast.
May I add one more thing?
Sure.
I would like to say, well, beyond thanking you guys for having me on the podcast, this is great to be here and I've had a lot of fun. And I'm really passionate about this stuff. I could probably talk about it for hours. But I also want to say, even for people who aren't looking to do something with Litco LSO, if you want to reach out and you just want to learn more, or if I can help with something, I love to do that. Now, I'm going to sometimes be slow in responding to these messages, and I do work to get around to everybody who wants to understand a little bit more about this world, because I just have an interest, again, in protecting our industry from the opportunists. So if I can do that in any way, I would love to. So thank you again for having me on. It's been a great pleasure.
Awesome. Blessed. Thank you.